All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the MCU tournament. Let me get this pulled up on my screen now. There we go. All right, so as you can see on your screen, I know it's a little small right now, but so the way I seeded these movies was just oldest movie to newest movie. So, for example, Iron Man is the number one seed because it was the first MCU movie. It's the oldest MCU movie, and then the lowest seed is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy 3, just because that's the newest movie. So, not necessarily any ranking here besides that, but we're going to do a tournament basically and break it down that way. I'll zoom in here in a second once we actually start the matchups, but in the comment section, drop your thoughts on the matchups, who you would pick. Let me know your rankings. All right, with that being said, let me zoom in here. All right, so let me give you a little breakdown of the matchups here. So we're going to have Iron Man versus Guardians 3 to start us off. And then we got Spider-Man Homecoming versus Thor Ragnarok. Winter Soldier versus Black Widow. Thor the Dark World versus Shang-Chi. The Incredible Hulk versus Quantamania. Guardians 2 versus Black Panther. The Original Guardians versus Spider-Man Far From Home. Iron Man 3 versus Eternals. Then we got Iron Man 2 versus Wakanda Forever. Doctor Strange Infinity War. Age of Ultron Endgame. The Avengers No Way Home. Thor versus Love and Thunder. Civil War versus Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man versus Captain Marvel. And the First Avenger versus Multiverse of Madness. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? All right, so our first matchup here, we've got Iron Man versus Guardians 3. So this is going to be a tough one. So Iron Man, the first movie of the MCU has got to be pretty good for it to sustain this type of success that it's had. And Iron Man was responsible basically for kickstarting the MCU. It was the first one. So it had to be pretty successful. And this is a good movie. Both these movies, honestly, are probably in my top 10 of MCU movies. So this is going to be one of the tougher ones. Guardians 3, I saw it about a month ago now, maybe a couple weeks, something like that. But I really enjoyed it. And I was pretty skeptical on this movie because I haven't really liked the MCU movies like I was saying lately. But Guardians 3 was actually pretty good. And I'm hoping MCU can get back to that tier. I don't know if this was just Guardians, I don't know if the rest of the movies will be bad, like kind of the rest of the Marvel movies have been lately. But hopefully this can get it back on track. But this is James Gunn's last movie directed in the MCU. He's headed over to DC now to be the head of DC. So hopefully he can carry that success over and make a good Batman movie. All right, but with that being said, here I'm going to have to go with Iron Man. Iron Man, the superior movie here. Iron Man, really one of the best superhero movies of all time in general, whether it's MCU or just any superhero genre, DC, MCU, the rest of Marvel, whatever. A tremendous movie. All right, so moving right along here, we've got Spider-Man Homecoming versus Thor Ragnarok. So this one, both these came out a few years ago. Homecoming, Spider-Man's basically homecoming, like it says, to the MCU. A pretty enjoyable movie. Kind of gives you that, is it John Hughes, those type of teen movie vibes, in school, high school. And it's just all around enjoyable movie. But competing against Thor Ragnarok here, it's got some pretty tough competition. Thor Ragnarok, in my opinion, one of the funnier and one of the better MCU movies, in all honesty. And kind of surprised me because I didn't really like Thor that much. I didn't like The Dark World. I don't think anybody did. But Thor Ragnarok, probably in my top 10, probably in my top 5, honestly, of MCU movies. So here I'm going to have to go Thor Ragnarok, which is going to set up a nice round 2 matchup when we come back later. All right, so moving right along here, we've got Captain America Winter Soldier versus Black Widow. So Black Widow, actually, let's start with Winter Soldier, then we'll go to Black Widow. But Winter Soldier, all the Captain America trilogy is pretty enjoyable, and this one included. I know a lot of people, this is in their like top 5 MCU movies because of how dark it is. It's pretty grounded and gritty. But reintroduces basically Bucky Barnes, which is Captain America's best friend, or the Winter Soldier in this case, coming up against Black Widow. So Black Widow, just years too late in my opinion. Black Widow, if they would have made it like 5-10 years before, it would have been all right in my opinion, but they missed the train on this one. I mean, it came out after she'd already been killed in the MCU. So really, what do you expect here? I mean, so with that being said, I'm going to go with Winter Soldier. If you're watching, do me a favor, hit that like button. It does help drive the algorithm a little bit. And also, if you're not subscribed yet, do that if you enjoy what you're seeing so far. So next up, we've got Thor the Dark World versus Shang-Chi. So Thor the Dark World, really one of the first misfires for the MCU, in my opinion. And this one I just didn't like. And I didn't like the first Thor, but it was at least watchable in my opinion. This movie was just pretty unwatchable. it sucked, frankly, to be honest with you. But going up against Shang-Chi, one of the more it's an average MCU movie in my opinion. Not bad, not good, but pretty enjoyable nonetheless. So here I'm gonna go Shang-Chi, which is really one of the only recent MCU movies that I kind of halfway enjoyed that wasn't just absolutely abysmal. All right, we got one more comment. Magic Man says his favorite MCU movie is Batman. Uh, Batman's a good character, probably better than any movie in the MCU, but Batman's not a part of the MCU, I don't think. But appreciate the comment. But you can't go wrong with Batman. I hope the next Batman movie's good too. But I would probably take most of the Batman movies over anything in the MCU, quite frankly. So I agree with you there. All right, so next up we've got the Incredible Hulk, which had Edward Norton in it. So not the Incredible Hulk we got now, but the Incredible Hulk back then versus Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. So Quantumania, the trailers for this actually kind of had me excited for this because it looked good. And going into Quantumania, you don't really know the possibilities, but really the multiverse has kind of sort of ruined the MCU for me because nothing's for sure. Like somebody could die and they're going to come back eventually in a different universe. You know what I mean? But going up against Incredible Hulk, I'm actually a big fan of the Incredible Hulk. I know like, a lot of people don't like it that much, but Edward Norton, in my opinion, he's a good actor and he does a good job in this movie. It was kind of a darker Incredible Hulk movie. If you remember, you probably hadn't seen it in a while, if you've even seen it, because I think this was the second movie in the MCU, so it's been a long time since the movies came out. But if you remember in the end credit scenes, Tony Stark pops up, basically trying to recruit the Incredible Hulk to, or Bruce Banner, I guess, to come to the Avengers. All right, but with that being said, here I'm gonna have to go with the Incredible Hulk. Wasn't a big fan of Quantumania, and like I said, the Incredible Hulk is actually pretty high, maybe in my top 15 in the MCU rankings. So pretty slept on, in my opinion. All right, so next up we've got Guardians 2 versus Black Panther. Okay, so Guardians 2. This one disappointed me because I'm actually a big fan of the Guardians trilogy, and I was hoping this one would be as good as the first one, but they kind of just missed the magic with this one. It's not near as funny as the first one. And having Kurt Russell come in as not Ant-Man, sorry, Peter Quill's dad kind of gave me hope that, oh yeah, they got a good villain coming in because most of the villains in the MCU are kind of lackluster. But I just really didn't like Guardians 2, unfortunately. But going up against Black Panther I actually saw, I think, 3 times in theaters. Not saying I'd recommend go do that, but Black Panther was an enjoyable movie, but the last fight was kind of iffy, a little too much CGI in my opinion. But the rest of the movie, just kind of the premise itself lends itself to a good movie. The throne being up for grabs and then basically trying to fight for that throne is always pretty entertaining. All right, but with that being said, out of Guardians 2 and Black Panther, I'm going to have to go with Black Panther. All right, so next up here, we've got the original Guardians. So Guardians of the Galaxy 1 going against Far From Home. So we'll start with Guardians here. Guardians of the Galaxy, one of the better movies in the MCU. It's a feel-good movie. It's got the good music, Hooked on a Feeling, a whole bunch of different songs that you like. And watching the cast here work together, the Guardians are kind of all misfits at this point. They're not necessarily Guardians all together at this time, but watching them kind of come together as a group, pretty enjoyable to watch. You got Peter Quill, so Star-Lord, you got Drax. Drax is always pretty funny. Rocket Raccoon, Gamora, Groot. How could you forget Groot? It's just an enjoyable movie. Going up against Far From Home. So Spider-Man, all 3 Spider-Mans in the MCU were pretty enjoyable. I don't think any of them are necessarily top tier, but they're all pretty enjoyable. Far From Home is the one that had Jake Gyllenhaal in it as Mysterio. This one was enjoyable, but had some questionable stuff. Like, I know Tony Stark liked Spider-Man, but is he really going to leave his glasses with all that technology to the kid? I don't know about that. So here I'm going to go with Guardians of the Galaxy. Pretty good movie. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the Guardians trilogy minus the second one, but Guardians all around pretty good movie. So we got another comment here. Rey Mysterio. No, not that Rey Mysterio. Mysterio in the MCU. Now, if Rey Mysterio was in the MCU, that movie might be number 1. 619, baby. All right, so last up on this left side, we've got Iron Man 3 versus Eternals. So both of these, to be frank, pretty crappy movies in my opinion. Iron Man 3 kind of had some things going for it because it's got Iron Man and it had possibilities here, but Iron Man 3 I really didn't like that much, which is kind of disappointing because it could have been like a good Christmas movie that's rewatchable, but I really didn't like it that much. But with that being said, it doesn't got a lot of competition here. Eternals, maybe the worst movie in the MCU, definitely one of them. It's tough to choose when you got 2 crappy movies here, though. We're going to go with Iron Man 3, though. It got lucky there. It got an easy matchup. So All right, so to recap so far on the left side, round one, Iron Man defeated Guardians 3, Thor Ragnarok beat Homecoming, Winter Soldier beat Black Widow, Shang-Chi beat Thor the Dark World, Incredible Hulk beat quantamania, Black Panther beat Guardians 2, Guardians beat Far From Home, and Iron Man 3 beat Eternals. All right, so let's go over to the right side here. All right, so we've got Iron Man 2 versus Wakanda Forever. So, all right, Magic Man, you were asking for it earlier. Here you go. So, Wakanda Forever versus Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2, one of the bigger disappointments for me in the MCU, because Iron Man, the first one, is a really good movie just in general, whether it's MCU or just generic. Iron Man 2 kind of had me hoping too, because it had Mickey Rourke as the villain. So was hoping to be good, but didn't really live up to the hype for me. Versus Wakanda Forever. Wakanda Forever, uh, one of the only recent MCU movies that I liked. It actually might be better than Black Panther. I know that's probably a controversial take, but me personally, I might have liked it better than not Wakanda Forever. I might have liked Wakanda Forever better than Black Panther. That's a tough one, but I'm gonna have to go Wakanda Forever here. Wakanda Forever, like I said, one of my favorite movies of late from the MCU. I really like the story they had here with Shuri, and I just really enjoyed this movie. It was a good movie. All right, so next up we've got Doctor Strange versus Infinity War. This is probably a cakewalk, but Magic Man says finally a 16. I'm betting on this right now. I'm perfect so far. So what's your parlay, Magic Man? Let me know what it looks like. I don't want to ruin your last leg, so let me know what you got. All right, so Doctor Strange versus Infinity War. Doctor Strange is pulling a tough matchup here. Doctor Strange is pretty enjoyable. One of those that was kind of average, nothing great, nothing good here. But Infinity War, this and Endgame are just peak MCU probably. I mean, it's tough. It's gonna be tough to top those. Let's be honest here. So with that being said, we're gonna have to go Infinity War here. Doctor Strange, you had a good run this season, but Infinity War is going to beat you down. This might be over by halftime in this matchup. All right, so next up we got Age of Ultron versus Endgame. Age of Ultron. I can remember the day I saw this movie because the person I was seeing with slipped in, even though we were supposed to be seeing it at noon. So I went over to his house to pick him up and he wasn't awake. So I had to leave him and go see the movie by myself. But that was just the start to this movie because this movie was not very good in my opinion. I need to rewatch Age of Ultron though. I might give it another shot. But Ultron was kind of disappointing. The trailers for this, they played no string on me, like you ain't got no strings on me. And it was a good trailer with him voicing that over, but the movie itself is just a little bloated that not a lot happened. They killed Quicksilver too early, in my opinion. Spoiler alert if you hadn't seen that. They killed Quicksilver, and Ultron was just a disappointing villain. Versus Endgame, which we all know Endgame. It's got time travel, goes over the top, but one of the best Marvel movies of all time, one of the best superhero movies of all time. So you got to go with Endgame. All right, next up we've got the Avengers versus No Way Home. So Avengers, that's the original Avengers. First time seeing the whole cast together. So you got Thor here, Captain America, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man. Let's see, Hawkeye, Black Widow. Is there somebody else I'm leaving out? Probably am. Going up against Loki, but it's their first time coming together as the Avengers with help from the Shield and Samuel L. Jackson versus No Way Home. So Spider-Man No Way Home is the one that came out a couple years ago. One of my favorite experiences in the theater because you see the return of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. The crowd popped in this one, and how can you not? Seeing the old Spider-Man, that was pretty cool to see. But unfortunately here, No Way Home is going to get beat by the Avengers, in my opinion. Avengers is just enjoyable in general. It's going to be tough to beat. But No Way Home, pretty good movie, had a good run, but not going to be able to top the Avengers. All right, so next up here, we've got Thor versus Love and Thunder. So the original Thor, kind of underrated movie in my opinion. I enjoyed it. There's a lot of like Greek type of movie here. It's got an older movie feel, if you know what I'm saying. Going up against Love and Thunder. Love and Thunder was just over the top, man. Ragnarok was good, but Love and Thunder just overdid it too much and just went off the rails in my opinion. So this one's going to be easy. Thor in a landslide. Love and Thunder just kind of reiterated that I was not liking the MCU for a little bit there. All right, so next up here we've got Civil War versus Ant-Man and the Wasp. So Civil War is technically a Captain America movie, I guess, but Captain America's / Avengers movie, I guess, because it's got everybody in here, but it's Captain America movie. Civil War was an enjoyable movie for sure because you had to basically with your friends pick my team Iron Man and my team Cap. What team am I here? And so seeing everybody go against each other, all of your Avengers, pretty entertaining to watch. Going up against Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man itself, I enjoyed the first one. Ant-Man and the Wasp was kind of lackluster. Didn't have the same comedy feel that the first one had, in my opinion. So I'm gonna have to go with Civil War here. All right, so moving right along, we got two lefts in the first round. So we've got Ant-Man versus Captain Marvel. So, like I said in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ant-Man I actually enjoyed a lot. So Ant-Man was pretty enjoyable to me, pretty funny. Michael Pena's character in this pretty hilarious, and Paul Rudd's already always pretty enjoyable to watch. Ant-Man, kind of an underrated movie, pretty slept on in my opinion, because you think just because Ant-Man's going to be super cheesy and not very good. Now, it was cheesy, it was funny, but just because you think it's a little cheesy doesn't mean it can't be good. You know what I mean? So Ant-Man was good here. Captain Marvel, unfortunately, maybe this and Eternals are probably right there neck and neck on the worst MCU movies. Borderline unwatchable. So Ant-Man's going to get an easy one here. All right, so in the last one, we've got Captain America, the First Avenger versus Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So Captain America, the First Avenger, probably, in my opinion, well, I already said that on a couple movies, but definitely one of the more slept on movies, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of it. I know a lot of people don't like this movie, but I actually really enjoyed this. It might be my favorite movie in the Captain America trilogy, but going up against Multiverse of Madness, which is the Doctor Strange sequel, came out, was it this year? Did it come out this year? They kind of advertised that this movie would be pretty crazy, bouncing around different multiverses, and they did that, but it wasn't as good as I was hoping. They brought Sam Raimi in, which directed the first two Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, so I kind of had hope for this movie. But unfortunately, didn't really live up to it. So, Magic Man, you're going to get your wish here. We're going to go with First Avenger. Our Sweet 16 matchups on the right side, we've got Wakanda Forever versus Infinity War, Endgame versus the Avengers, Thor versus Civil War, and Ant-Man versus the First Avenger. Let me zoom out a little bit so y'all can see this. Our first match of the Sweet 16 here, in the top left bracket, Iron Man versus Thor Ragnarok. This is a tough one for me because I'm going to be 100% honest. These are both in my top 5 movies in the MCU. So this is a tough matchup here. You got Iron Man, the one that started it all, one of the best movies in the MCU, if not just superhero movies in general, like I said earlier, versus Thor Ragnarok, which may be the funniest movie in the MCU. And seeing Thor and the Incredible Hulk and Valkyrie work together here with Loki, pretty enjoyable to watch. But with that being said, I'm going to have to go with Iron Man here. Iron Man's going to take the win here in a pretty slim margin because actually Thor Ragnarok, like I said, is pretty dang good too. So Iron Man's going to take the win here. Let's see who they're going to face in the Elite Eight. All right, so next up here, we've got the Winter Soldier versus Shang-Chi. So Winter Soldier, the sequel to Captain America, the First Avenger. It's got basically Captain America versus Bucky almost of sorts. That it's kind of got that. And it's more of a darker spy movie. This has got that elevator scene. If you've seen that, you probably know what I'm talking about. Going up against Shang-Chi, one of the more okay movies in the MCU. It's not great, but it's not bad. But Winter Soldier is going to win here, probably in a beatdown, because I really wasn't a big fan of Shang-Chi, but it got easy round 1 matchup. All right, Magic Man, you're welcome. All right, so next up, we've got the Incredible Hulk versus Black Panther. Okay, so this is going to be a tough one for me. I know a lot of people, like I said, don't like the Incredible Hulk, but I'm actually a big fan of this movie. So the Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton, like I said earlier, one of the more gritty, darker movies, in my opinion, in the MCU, versus Black Panther, which I know a lot of people love Black Panther, and it was enjoyable for me. Chadwick Boseman did a great job in this movie, as well as Michael B. Jordan. But I'm going to have to give the edge. This might be a controversial one here. Probably is, but I'm going to have to give the edge to the Incredible Hulk here. I know a lot of people, this is probably their bottom 5 MCU movies, but I really like this movie. So it's going to edge out Black Panther, probably in a slim margin, but it's going to edge out Black Panther. Moving right along here, we've got Guardians versus Iron Man 3. I'm not even really going to waste my time talking about this one too much because Iron Man 3 just escaped by barely facing Eternals. It kind of got lucky there. So this is going to be Guardians. Guardians going to get the easy one here. All right, let's go to the other side now. All right, so our Sweet 16 matchup over here, we've got Wakanda Forever versus Infinity War. Wakanda Forever was a good movie, but it's got a tough matchup here. This is like facing the 1 seed in the bracket. You're running up against, who was in the 1 seed this year? You're running up against Kansas, basically, in this aspect. Wakanda Forever, as good as it was, it's going to be tough to match Infinity War because Infinity War just brings everybody together and it's just an enjoyable movie in general. If you're an MCU fan, the Infinity War is what we waited 10 years for. Well, Endgame was, but Infinity War led up to that, Infinity War was the Fast 10 of the Fast and the Furious saga, family. Infinity War is all about family, and it's tough to be family when you got it. So we're going to go with Infinity War here. You don't need Avengers when you got family. That's simple. All right, so next up here, we've got Endgame versus the Avengers. This is a tough one. because these are both for sure in my top five, let alone maybe my top two, honestly. Endgame versus the Avengers is going to be a tough one to talk about because Endgame, like I said, is basically what you built up to and the whole MCU. This is what we've been fighting for. Definitely, probably the best theater experience I had. I know, like I said earlier, No Way Home was a close second, but uh, Endgame is definitely the best experience I've had. Seeing everybody come back, the crowd went wild. You couldn't even hear what was going on in this. You couldn't even hear what was going on in this movie because the crowd was going so crazy, and the guy next to me was going absolutely nuts. And that just made this movie even more enjoyable than like it even could be. You know, just that you probably won't be able to. You won't ever get that theater experience again until Dom brings his family back. But going up against the Avengers, like I said, was kind of the first time in the superhero genre that everybody came together. Besides, not talking about like X-Men, stuff like that, but the first time everybody kind of came together. I'm gonna have to give the edge to Endgame here. Endgame, one of the best MCU movies, one of the best superhero movies ever. I know I said that about Iron Man earlier, but this one, same thing. You can't get enough of this movie. It goes back in time to the perfect spots. Just it's one of those movies that just makes you feel good inside. Makes you feel like you got an ice cold Dr. Pepper. All right, so next up we've got Thor versus Civil War. So Thor, again, like I said, one of kind of the more slept on movies, in my opinion, in the MCU. Really doesn't get enough love. It just gets a lot of hate, in my opinion, the Thor franchise in general. And I actually enjoyed this one. Going up against Civil War. And Civil War is, like I said, a Captain America movie, but semi-Avengers movie, semi-Captain America movie. So you also get the introduction here of Black Panther and Chadwick Boseman. And seeing all your favorite superheroes fight against each other is pretty tough to watch. But it's good to watch, though. Like, it's entertaining as all heck. So with that being said here, I'm going to have to give the win to Civil War, edging out Thor. All right, so next up, we've got Ant-Man versus the First Avenger to round out our Sweet 16. Ant-Man is an enjoyable movie. One of the more comedic movies of the MCU, but it's actually enjoyable. It's not just straight comedy like Love and Thunder. There's actually some good stuff here. Michael Pena is a standout, like I said earlier. Watching him recap what all's been going down, pretty funny, pretty hilarious to watch. Going up against Captain America: The First Avenger, and Captain America: The First Avenger is just a good backstory, good origin story of Captain America through the war, all the people he knows, taking him through his life story. Pretty fun to watch, in my opinion. So I'm gonna have to give the win to the First Avenger. All right, so we are into the Elite Eight. Let me scroll up so you can see it. 1 second. And in the top left corner, we've got Iron Man versus Winter Soldier. Bottom left, we've got the Incredible Hulk versus Guardians of the Galaxy. Top right here, we've got Infinity War versus Endgame. Then the bottom right corner, we've got Civil War versus the First Avenger. In the top left, we've got Iron Man versus Captain America: Winter Soldier. So both these movies are pretty enjoyable, really good MCU movies, and more dark than not for an MCU movie. Iron Man was actually pretty dark. He goes in the cave, if you remember, has to basically fight back for his life to survive. I'm gonna have to give the edge here to Iron Man beating Winter Soldier, putting it in the Final Four. All right, so in our next Elite Eight matchup, we've got the Incredible Hulk versus Guardians of the Galaxy. So, Incredible Hulk is a tough one. Incredible Hulk is, like I said, pretty slept on, in my opinion, in the MCU. Going up against Guardians of the Galaxy, which is just an all-around enjoyable movie, to be honest with you. One of, if not the most enjoyable. Let's go with Guardians, man. It just makes you feel good inside. The music, the cast. Guardians is just an enjoyable movie. All right, so Infinity War versus Endgame. All right, in the top right bracket. This is the toughest matchup here, probably, out of the whole bracket. So you've got the beginning of the end or the end of the end in Endgame. So Infinity War was basically Avengers Endgame Part 1. Because if you remember, they released season Part 1 and Part 2. Or that was kind of what it was billed as before it came out, All right, with that being said here, we're going to have to go with Endgame here. Endgame was just a sight to see, man. I don't think the MCU will ever be able to recover from this. Not in a bad way, just you can't top this. The whole franchise built up to this moment. The fans were excited for this moment, and I don't know if movies just hadn't been the same since this. I don't know. They've just been going downhill, in my opinion. The anticipation for this is on par with probably Force Awakens for me as far as anticipation, you know, because Force Awakens, Star Wars, they ruined that, so I'm not going to talk about that. But those were just unmatched in anticipation, in my opinion. I'll admit, the first time I saw Infinity War, it pissed me off because it just left off in a moment where it's like, man, that's it. But after I saw Endgame, it made me appreciate Infinity War a little more. But the first time I saw Endgame, or sorry, the first time I saw Infinity War, I really didn't like it because it was like, man, this is it. We're just leaving off like this. All right, so in our last matchup of the Elite Eight, we've got Civil War versus the first Avengers. So we got two Captain America movies here. Civil War puts one side of the Avengers versus the other side of the Avengers versus the first Avenger, which is basically the backstory, the origin story of Captain America. With that being said, here I'm gonna have to go with let's go with Civil War. So Civil War is going to edge First Avenger out, actually in a pretty close matchup because I like First Avenger a lot. I know a lot of people don't, but I actually like this movie. So that puts us in our final four here. Let me zoom in real quick. All right, so in our final four here, we have Iron Man versus Guardians of the Galaxy. So that's the original. And Endgame versus Civil War. So if you're just joining us, by the way, drop a like on this video if you could. Really helps this video out, helps the algorithm out. And if you're new here, if you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe. All right, so moving right along, we have made it to the final four. So started off with 32 movies. We're down to 4. Let's see what happens here, shall we? All right, so in the left side of the bracket, we have Iron Man versus Guardians of the Galaxy. Down the right side, we've got the Avengers Endgame versus Civil War. So I don't know if I would say these are my top 4 MCU movies necessarily, but it's not far off. Trying to think here. Besides these, I would probably say the original Avengers I might put over one of these movies, as well as maybe Thor Ragnarok. But yeah, these are our final 4 in this ranking with how we did the tournament. So, all right, so start on the left here. We've got Iron Man versus Guardians of the Galaxy. So Iron Man, again, like I said, started it all for the MCU. One of the more enjoyable superhero movies in general for me. Going up against Guardians of the Galaxy, which is just an all-around enjoyable movie. The music, the cast, the soundtrack in general, great movie. Here I'm gonna have to go with Iron Man. Iron Man is just a dark, gritty movie, and I love it. So not many MCU movies are like this. You know, now they all try to be funny. Not many are just straight serious. They don't make them like they used to. Magic Man says, I bet you will play Great Hulk. Let me see. Get real bad. You won't like me when I'm angry. That good enough for you? I don't know. Should I break this pin? Will that count? There we go. It landed somewhere. Heads up. Okay, anyways. All right, moving right along. All right, so our last matchup in the final 4, we have Avengers Endgame versus Captain America Civil War. So, 2 Avengers movies, essentially, because like I said, Civil War, even though it's a Captain America movie, fairly Avengers movie. I really need that pin right now because I need to write something down. All right, so anyways, Avengers Endgame versus Civil War, 2 awesome movies. So Civil War, I can remember when I saw it, me and 2 friends on the way home, like basically arguing about which side we'd be on, you know, Captain America or Iron Man. This is back when we were in high school, so that was good stuff, you know. With that being said, I'm going to go with Endgame. So Endgame's going to edge out Civil War in a pretty close matchup, which means in our championship, let me zoom in here, we're going to have Iron Man versus Endgame. This tournament actually played out perfectly because these are my top 2 MCU movies, so even they weren't on the same side, so it actually played itself out. So this is going to be a tough matchup here. So we got Iron Man versus Endgame. Iron Man, like I've said before, one of the best movies in the MCU. Obviously, like I said, it's in my top 2. One of the best superhero movies in general. Same thing with Endgame. This goes for both of these movies, really. I love both these movies. It's tough to choose from. All right, with that being said, I'm going to go with Endgame here. So the champion is going to be Endgame. The best movie in the MCU, in my opinion, Avengers Endgame. One of the best superhero movies in general, Avengers Endgame. What I need to do is have the whole MCU and DCU bracket. I wonder how many movies that would make. If I could do that to get to a field of 64, I might have to do that because that would be pretty fun to do. If you want to know where I got this bracket, let me know and I'll send it to you. Just drop a comment after you're done with this video. Also, comment your movie rankings, your top 5, your top 10, or heck, if you want to comment all 32, do it and I'll read it. Thanks for watching. Until next time, AG out. Stay classy, San Diego.